What if awakening is not about becoming less human? Have you ever wondered what it actually means to be spiritually awake? Not as a concept, but as real life. In your emotions, your relationships, your nervous system, and even how you show up in the world with other people. Because for a long time, I thought awakening meant becoming less reactive, less emotional, less human. But over the years of working with people in emotional healing, trauma integration, spiritual development, and with my own work with myself, I've come to understand something very different. I'm Allison Batty Capps of Blossoming Heart Wellness. I'm a licensed therapist, a yoga coach, a Reiki master, a spiritual mentor, and an author. And in my work with people, I consistently see something that challenges how awakening is often described in social media. Based on what I'm seeing in communities around the world, it seems like many people are quietly trying to meet what I consider to be impossible standards. In these communities, I see that spiritual means to many people permanent calm, no anxiety, no emotional overwhelm, no reactivity. I see people start to interpret their humanity as failure. I see my clients starting to think, if I'm anxious, I'm not growing. If I'm overwhelmed, something's wrong with me. If I'm emotional, I must not be awakened yet. And I don't think that is what is actually happening inside human beings. The people I work with are often not struggling because they lack insight, because they're not awakened. These are individuals that often are very awakened and very compassionate. But instead, I see them struggling because they don't know how to stay grounded when their inner experience becomes intense. What I work on with clients is not removing the emotion, it's changing the relationship with it. For example, people often begin to notice things like, I get overwhelmed by my thoughts and start believing them too quickly. I lose myself in emotional intensity and relational stress. I swing between over-explaining and shutting down. I understand things intellectually but still get hijacked in real-time emotional experience. And what I find shifts with my clients over time is not that these experiences disappear. It is that people begin to stay present during emotional activation instead of collapsing into it. They begin to be able to distinguish between feeling, meaning, and true. They learn how to regulate their nervous system more quickly after activation, and they build more trust with their internal experience. So my clients move the goal from not becoming someone who never struggles to being someone who can stay connected to themselves when they find themselves struggling. One thing that I have noticed is that many people begin measuring spiritual growth by comfort. If I feel calm, I'm evolved. If I feel activated, I'm regressing. But human life doesn't work that way. Some of the most meaningful growth happens inside grief, relational rupture, uncertainty, emotional overwhelm, loss. Not because harm is acceptable or suffering is acceptable, but because oftentimes we make meaning out of those experiences. And if awakening only exists when life is calm, then awakening can sometimes become something that is fragile, because I see human nervous systems adapting to life, and sometimes that calm disappears exactly when we need it most. And I want to name something very clearly. I don't see awakening as a hierarchy of human worth. A calm nervous system is not more valuable than an activated one. A grieving person is not less evolved than a peaceful person. But I also want to be clear about something else. Validating our humanity is not the same thing as excusing harm. Being human does not mean we are not responsible for how our words, our actions, our presence affects other people. We can honor our emotional experience, our nervous system activation, and psychological complexity, and still stay accountable for impact. Part of awakening for me is learning how to hold both compassion for what is happening internally and responsibility for how it lands externally. Because sometimes what is happening inside us is understandable and still requires repair, awareness, or change in how we show up. So I don't see this as everything is acceptable because we are human. I see it as everything is human and we are still responsible for how we participate in relationship and in systems that affect one another. Awakening then is not an exemption from responsibility. It is an increased capacity for awareness of impact, not in shame, not in perfection, but in honesty, repair, and care. From a psychological perspective, healing is not about eliminating emotion. It is about changing our relationship to emotion. We don't heal because sadness disappears. We heal because we're able to stay with the sadness without becoming it. And we don't heal because fear disappears. We heal because fear no longer completely organizes our behavior. Neuroscience points to something similar. A healthy nervous system is not a permanently calm nervous system. It is actually one that has flexibility, one that activates, recovers, returns, adapts. So the goal is not about perfection. The goal is about capacity and flexibility, the ability to return to yourself again and again and again. So I've been thinking about a set of different questions. Instead of how do I stop getting triggered, I ask, how do I relate to myself and others when I am triggered? Instead of how do I stay peaceful all the time, I ask, how do I return to compassion when I lose contact with the state of peace? Instead of how do I transcend my humanity, I ask, how do I meet my humanity and others' humanity more fully while holding myself and others accountable? Because what I see in real transformation is not the absence of activation. It's the ability to stay connected through it. And one of the biggest misunderstandings I see is confusing awareness with perfection. Awareness does not mean you never get activated. It means you notice it sooner. Awareness does not mean you never feel anger. It means you can stay in relationship with anger without being consumed by it. Awareness does not remove humanity. It changes your relationship with humanity. And at this point in my life, awakening looks less like transcendence and more like relationship. A relationship with my nervous system, with my emotions, with other people, with reality as it is, not as I wish it would be. And what I see in the people that I work with is that this shift is not abstract. It changes things like how quickly someone recovers from emotional overwhelm, how they show up in relationships without abandoning themselves or others, how much they trust their internal experiences, and how much capacity they have to stay present in complexity without collapsing or disconnecting. Not perfectly, but progressively. I want to leave you with some additional questions. What if there's nothing wrong with your humanity? What if your emotions are not evidence of failure? What if awakening is not about becoming someone else? What if it is learning about how to stay in relationship with yourself and others more fully? Just notice what comes up when you contemplate these questions. No pressure, just awareness. Perhaps awakening is not about becoming less human. Perhaps it is more capability of being human. Not perfectly, not permanently, but relationally, again and again and again. And if this resonates and you're navigating emotional intensity, spiritual experiences, or relational or inner patterns that feel hard to hold alone, this is the kind of work that I support people with. I help people integrate emotional depth and spiritual experiences and psychological understanding of their patterns so that they can feel more grounded, more connected in relationships, and more able to trust their own internal experience. And to learn more about how to work with me, I invite you to read my book, The Divine Within: Healing Ourselves to Heal the World, which offers a step-by-step guide of how to develop more self-awareness and more self-compassion and a deeper relationship with your internal state. Or you can go to my website, blossomingheartwellness.com, to learn more about my online courses, or to work with me one-on-one as a wellness coach, a therapy client, or in spiritual mentorship. And whether or not we work together, I am really glad that you are here exploring these questions. Sending you deep love and appreciation for who you are.